Introduce our moderator, who is a very impressive human. This is Heather McKee. Heather designs and promotes solutions to inequality in America. Her first book, The Sum of Us, What Racism Costs Everyone, and How We Can Prosper Together, spent 10 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list and was, that's right. That's right, that's right. And I can't wait for the second book to come out. And was long-listed for the National Book Award and Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Nonfiction, among numerous other awards. In the summer of 2022, The Sum of Us was adapted into a Spotify podcast by Higher Ground, the production company of Barack and Michelle Obama. Heather is the chair of the board of Color of Change, the country's largest online racial justice organization, and volunteers for numerous other boards in fields of philanthropy and social justice. Heather graduated from Yale University and the University of California, Berkeley School of Law, and has honorary degrees from Muhlenberg College, Niagara University, and CUNY School of Public Health. She lives in Brooklyn with her urbanist husband and 2 children, and it is an honor to have you here. Let's give it up one more time for Heather McKee.
Jonathan, wait, did you really introduce yourself? I don't know that you really did you?
I'm Jonathan Foy, and you, in the second half of our program, you'll hear more about myself and the work that we are going to be supporting with, so thank you for that.
All right, this is such an honor to be here. I got a call, was it Friday or something, you know? Chancellor Samuel, sort of giddy, was like, is this Heather McKee? And I was like, yes, who's this? You know, because I don't usually answer unknown calls. But when he explained who he was, first of all, I said, yes, how can I be of service? And then also, of course, what the vision is for this day, which is a kickoff of a very important piece, I think, in New York City history, where all of you who are educators, advocates, parents, people who are champions of children, of learning, of public schools, and of this city are coming together to do something very special. You have been endowed with an incredible amount of responsibility and opportunity to forge connections among yourselves and then also learn from one another across these districts to potentially reinvigorate the promise of what these communities can be for our children. And this has to be done. You know, every generation or two, we have to look anew at how we educate our kids and what today's children and today's housing patterns and tomorrow's needs are asking of us. And so I'm just very excited to be a little bit a part of this, to interview the Chancellor and to kick off this wonderful day. And so we're going to have a little chat, a little fireside chat, and you know that expression has become very overused, but this is quite a fireplace. You know, people will be on a Zoom with a fireside chat, and I'm like, I don't see any fire, but this is good. Fireside chat. And we're gonna really talk. You all are gonna get to it. You're gonna have some lunch and get into it. Beautiful building. My first, you know, interacting with so many DOE staff, and my first time for including me. And obviously, each and every one about why they're sitting in these chairs. And of course, you are passionate about why. Just ask that question first. What from whence comes your passion for what you're doing as Chancellor?
Well, thank you. And first of all, Heather, you know, I am not into promoting any book or book sales or anything like that, but quite frankly, the Sum of Us did impact my the way I view this work immensely, and a lot of the things that I've done in NYC public schools over the last number of years was really influenced by a lot of the philosophies outlined in your book. And so thank you for that. and that explains the giddiness when I called you. But you know, in really talking about the passion, about why I do what I do, I cannot start that conversation without talking about my 3 kids, right? Because Joe, who is my eldest, you know, I was just in a different place when he was born and thinking about schools for him than I was when Layla was born, who is my 7-year-old. And I think that journey as a parent over the course of 10 years really impacted how I view this work. So when I was a principal when Joe was born, and you know, I don't think I was as, you know, even securely middle class in our city as I am now. And I was thinking, like, how do I opportunities, and how do I get him proximity to, you know, power and networks and so on. And so, you know, he started off, you know, as the Post will tell you, in a private school, right? He started off in a private school, and then we and like, you know, for him, you know, I think I learned so much about what happens in those environments in independent schools, and I started questioning, like, what was he exposed to every day, and what was it going to look like for him as an adolescent in that space. And so, you know, when he got to 5th grade, we're definitely thinking about the transition points. We brought him into into public school, and it was even going through that process in public to get him into middle school in District 3, shout out District 3, like, it was so difficult to like, you know, schools were screened, you had to sign up to get to a tour, and it was just like, what is happening? It felt like I was going through a process to get to college or something. And so I committed to myself then, because by that time I was a deputy superintendent, and I was like, we have to figure out a better way to do middle school admissions in our city. And so I committed myself to being like, because I remember having my, you know, ex-wife and my wife try to get me into a tour and like figure out, like, because you had to like kind of camp out before you know, the tours would close after 5 minutes, and it was just a mess. And so I remember thinking, like, what about families who don't have that opportunity to like be spending that time? And so I said to myself, we have to do something about that. And, you know, I was fortunate to be in District 3 after the pandemic, when we had the conversations to go back to screens or not. And we chose to keep the lottery in place because, like, there were, you know, 90-something% of families get their first choice, get their top 3 choices to go to schools. And that really, because there was a time when, you know, you literally had to put a school number 1 to get into that school. And you had to go there, and they'd be like, well, you can come, but you got to put us number 1, right? And all of those things. And so now, for my daughter, as she goes through public schools from day one, I hope that we can keep policies like the lottery in place, where you can try to find the best school that fits your needs, and then you can get in there. So that's like at the core of what I believe. I want to create opportunities for families where there's like equitable journeys, that it doesn't matter what your ability to spend time to get into a school is. You can get a high quality, safe school, integrated school that has really rigorous curriculum.
So we know, thank you for sharing that about your family, and we have kids who are roughly the same age. I have a 7 and a 1.5-year-old. The 7-year-old is right now at PS11, and we
Shout out District
shout out
13.
PS11, but we know as parents that so often the experience of walking our kids through those doors feels very far away from the decision makers, at the district level, much less the chancellor. So what I want to know is, how does your experience as a parent, what you've learned, what you struggled with, how has that impacted your vision as a chancellor?
Yeah. So, number one, when I hear things that are said about schools or ideas that are put out there, I kind of play it through my lens as a parent, right? And so I'll give you some examples. Number one, when I say safe, rigorous, and truly integrated schools, I didn't just come up with those things. One, we interviewed as a system families who didn't come to our schools after getting an offer at kindergarten, right? And so when we interviewed those families, we said, give us the reasons you didn't come to our schools. And the number one reason was they didn't feel necessarily our schools were safe. Number two reason was they didn't necessarily feel we had the academic rigor that they wanted to. And then some is that, a lot of families, if you ask them, do you want a diverse school or not, sure, they'll say, of course, yes, of course, we want that. But when it comes down to the choices, safety and academic rigor really dwarfs the idea of a diverse school. And so, when I think about my own kids too, so running that through the schema in my mind, I'm saying, okay, of course I want a safe school for my child. Of course I want an academically rigorous child, and certainly for my daughter, I chose a dual language program because I felt like, by definition, there's like a lot of rigor in that program because you're learning a language, a new language for every other day. And so, when I think about what parents want, I really think, does it align with what I think as a parent? And if not, I try to interrogate it some more, but some of it turns out we all want the same thing. We all want nice things.
We do. That's right. That's the opening line in my book. Have you ever asked yourself why it is we can't have nice things? And the answer, according to my research, is racism, but I think we'll get back to that. Okay, so this is your motto, all right? This is your vision, right? Safe, academically rigorous, and truly integrated. Let's talk about academically rigorous for a minute. What is that? What did you find that means? What does the DOE understand that to mean? And what do the advocates, parents, and educators in this room need to know about that as they think about these questions?
Yeah, so I find that for parents, it's oftentimes a couple specific things. Like, okay, many parents are like, yeah, well, if I get into a GNT program, that is like the stamp of, and in my case, sure, if I get into a dual language, that is a stamp of rigor. Well, but when I think about it, I think about it from the perspective of, is every child in a particular school, right? And is held to high expectations. Because what we know is that, when a child is affirmed, can be held to high expectations, and because they believe that they're cared about, right? And so there are ways in which, as a system, over the last 4 or 5 years, that we've we've done some things that push on this notion of rigor. So number one, what we're doing with New York City Reads and Solves is really a great move. It puts everybody on a playing field and makes sure that there is at least a baseline for across the system, that we start with grade level content in what we're doing, right? That's something that I had never seen happen in DOE until the last couple of years. And then I think we can't stop at just the curriculum, though. We have to get to the point and think about, what are our young people actually thinking about? What are the critical thinking skills that they're learning? And how are we doing that across content areas? How are we helping them to solve big problems? How are we having productive struggle, right? So the curriculum is, but making sure that, in a classroom, are and connecting and actually really driving the learning themselves, I think is something that's really inspiring to me. And that's why, in places in District 3 and 13, we really look closely at IB as one of the options for doing that, not the only option.
What is IB?
So IB is an international baccalaureate program that really takes a look at transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary work in the lower grades. That means that, I think it's important to me that we don't just have project-based learning, but we have project-based learning that are linked to standards, that is linked to rigor, and that you're training teachers to ask the difficult questions about how you get that done. And I think if you don't do that, and that's one of the reasons, IB is like a big commitment. If you're not really investing in teachers to really create those experiences for young people, then you're not going to see the outcome that you need to see. And so for me, that's what rigor looks like when you're in a school and people are engaged in critical thinking, struggle. That's what it is, and it's not just, okay, all of our kids are in the same class to solve to say their time faster than the next person. Like, that's not what this is about. This is about deeper thinking and being able to apply knowledge.
I've been reflecting. They did a young readers adaptation of my book, and so I got to go around to school libraries and public libraries and high schools and middle schools all over the country with it. And it was so fascinating because I realized that young people today have access to every single piece of information on the globe. Mm-hmm. They can be like, hey Siri, hey Google, It's wild, right? I mean, oh, stop it, Siri. No. Stop listening. Anyway, so, which is so different from how we came up, right? We had to ask an adult or ask an older cousin. You know what I'm saying? If we want to know what was going on in the world. We had like 3 news channels, right? It's just totally different. So they, like we, have all of this information. But what they don't have is frameworks for understanding it and sifting through it. And, I think about my history classes. I went to every different type of school there is, public school in the inner city, public school in the suburbs, Catholic school, day school. I went to boarding school. I literally went to every, maybe not a charter school. I went to a private school. I went to a public college, right? Like everything. But I remember throughout all of them, I was still doing stuff like learning in chronological order the battles of the Revolutionary War. And I think about that was history, right? It was like I had to learn the battles in order. Why did I have to learn the battles in order? Like, what meaning did that give me, right? And so I think about, especially today, kids will never need to know the battles of the Revolutionary War in order because they can always look that up, right? But what they do need to know is concepts about why societies would go to war. What were we fighting over, right? And so I do think that this question of rigor, the quicker you get to giving people the tools to think in a world in which computers want to think for us, the more parents are like, yes, please, more of that. Because I think we really feel like we're at a precipice of a massive shift in what human beings can contribute. And so what we need to prepare our kids for, to be able to not even compete, but survive and be relevant in that world. I feel an anxiety among all of us as parents, and a real understanding that it's not about memorization and facts, because the facts are in your phone, right? But it's about critical thinking. And so I really appreciate hearing that as first and foremost. Let's talk about safety. I'm sorry, I have to say, when I hear you say that parents who didn't want their kids to go to public kindergarten were worried about safety, that's surprising to me. Was that surprising to you guys? You're like, no, I know this. I know this. Okay, all right. So let's talk about it. Let's unpack it. What does safety mean to you?
Yeah. So this one is, quite easy for me, because I think it's the table. So it's not just, obviously physical safety is important. It's not only about physical safety, especially now, it's also about emotional safety. It's part of setting the table for a child to be able to learn is about, do I feel a sense of belonging in my school? Do I feel like my school is a place where I want to be and where I feel some ownership about even? And so that's what it means to be affirmed. Like when we have young people in school who feel a sense of belonging, who feel that they are affirmed, only then can we actually hold them to high expectations, right? Because, I say it all the time, I want a school where a teacher or someone makes me feel the way my grandmother made me feel, right? I got there, I loved the smell of my grandmother's house. I loved when my grandmother hugged me. I loved, and she made me feel like I was the best thing since sliced bread. And I wasn't gonna get away with anything, right? Those two things, right? And so this idea that you need to get to school and have a teacher that feels that way about you, and that is not going to shortchange you in your education. The shortchanging happens, then it's not true affirmation. Then you're kind of getting into the soft bigotry of low expectations, right? It's not just about you loving on me. It's about you loving on me so that I can what this world has to come my way. And so that to me is true safety. As I've been going around to schools, it's really been clear to me that a school where young people are a part of the decision-making process is a school where they truly feel safe, right? That is an indicator of high levels of safety, because if the students feel that they're a part of the decision-making process, that they have a seat at the table, you can make some pretty reliable assumptions that they feel affirmed, that the staff in the school cares about them enough to make sure that those systems are in place.
That's beautiful. I love that imagery of the grandmother. That is exactly right. All right, so let's get to it. What does true integration mean? What's that third part?
Yeah, you kind of dabbled in, when adjacent to the AI conversation just now that we're having, citywide and nationwide. I was listening to the Daily this morning, New York Times Daily, where it's just a whole thing on it. I believe, in short, what you get in truly integrated schools is not AI-able. Right, this is about connection, right? This is about connection across difference. This is about preparing us for a hugely polarized society, that if you don't have schools where teachers, administrators are not trained to facilitate connection across difference, right? It means that you will, end up not being ready for what's here, right? We have a truly polarized society. We have, and sometimes we have current events that lead to bias in schools and increase in bias in schools. And if we are not working with our young people in integrated schools or not, but working with them on how you process that and develop empathy for folks, the other person, we are not really preparing them for what is a polarized society and to function in that. So if the first time, you are connecting with somebody across difference is when you show up in a dorm room or when you show up at a workplace, we would have really failed you as a young person. And that, to me, is why this idea of true integration is really important, because, you could go to school. It's not just about getting the demographics right. You could go to a school and the demographics could be reflective of the district or reflective of the city. But the experience in that school can look very different for folks across demographics, for kids across demographics. And if we are not preparing our teachers to be able to facilitate that, and I'm not necessarily asking to do things that, it's easy. Like, Jonathan is a facilitator of courageous conversations. I've facilitated courageous conversations. And it takes a whole bunch of work, right? But it is critical work if we're going to be working for young people, preparing them for what I see out there to not function but thrive in that environment. And I see the way our mayor operates. Like he is really good at connecting across difference in the city. And so that is what I think. And that's not AIable. You have to be able to connect with other human beings to get that right.
Well, not only is it not AIable, but it is, I believe, and the research that I've done has really validated the idea that it's the secret sauce of success. And research shows a lot of it, which has been, collected in New York City by New York City scholars for a long time, because we have this incredible experimentation here in New York with our diversity and our segregation in the classroom, that children of all races who go to meaningfully integrated schools perform better on math and science and critical thinking. And the reason why that is, both, from K through 12 and in the college and university setting, is because it's challenging. Because diverse groups where you come in and you have to have a bit of friction in order to do things together, and you're not all assuming the same references and set points and ways of looking at the world, that creates a sort of productive friction. It puts you on your game. It makes your mind have to stretch more in order to come to consensus. And we've learned that, like, diverse juries recall more facts, right? Diverse science teams come to breakthroughs faster. Diverse boards of directors have better fiduciary outcomes, right? This is the secret sauce of success, and in no other place like New York City should we be able to give our children the real gift of that. I know we all believe that. I know that's why we're all here. And I just want to say the science, the research, the pedagogical research is all behind it. This is the gift we can give our children now more than ever.
Yeah, and so I'd be remiss not to.
That was just like a digital applause. That's all right.
I would be remiss, though, not to kind of bring up some of the structural concerns
Yes.
that prevent us from moving to that why, right? And I think one of the big issues is around what we've seen in our city structurally, right? So just the large numbers of black families who've moved out of our city, oftentimes priced out of our city, and the impact that that has on our schools, and the impact that it has on communities. Like I think of Harlem, I think of Bed-Stuy, I think of just South Jamaica, like they're very clear examples of where those things hit the hardest, and sometimes those areas are also the areas that are hit with the charter penetration and so on. And so what you'll see is that if we do have segregated schools, then it means that the schools that serve black and brown kids will more than likely be more under-enrolled as many folks are leaving the city. It is not an individual school thing. It is not an individual principal thing. It's not a teacher thing. It's a systemic thing, right? And so since it's a systemic thing, we are going to explore systemic solutions, right? And this is one driver. And part of and maybe the center of my systemic solution is here today, right? When you are thinking about what you are working with the folks in your group, this is so that we can begin to get to some critical understanding of the problem and the superintendent of all the answers, right? And I think we have to tackle systemic issues, real engagement in groups of stakeholders, so that we can collectively get to some of these difficult problems that we are facing. Because we have to create schools that are going to make sure that New York City continues to be the engine of social mobility. New York City public schools continues to be the engine of social mobility in our system, in our city. And so, that's the reason I am so excited looking around this very diverse room, I will say, and thinking about what are the opportunities that we can get to as a system. And I just mentioned one structural issue. It's going to look different depending on the district that you're in, right? There's when we think about what the class size law is going to mean for our city, that looks different depending on the district that you're in. And when we think about what we need to do to create schools that have more resources, right? Because what do we know? If a school is more under-enrolled, it's more likely not to offer the advanced classes that you need. It may not offer the level of enrichment that you want to see, right? And so that's what we're getting at here, and that's the reason that we are here, to really put all of our minds together so that we can really respond at the district, local level with really thoughtful responses to a really critical problems.
So let's get to it. This is very exciting. This is the kickoff of these working groups. So straight from your mouth, I want to hear what are these working groups going to do? Why these districts? Why now? What's the plan?
Yeah, so the plan is to get to every single district across the city over the next 3 years, right? And what is really, inspiring to me about this is that it is local solutions for systemic problems. We have 32 districts across our city, community districts, 45 superintendencies with 45 unique solutions, right? And I don't think, not since I've been in DOE, have we engaged in this kind of response across the city. When people ask me, well, you know, you have mayoral control, and are you gonna really listen to parents, and are you gonna listen to communities? I think this is one of our main initial first steps in doing so, because it's not only about engaging and listening, it's about co-creating and working together in the same rooms with you all. And so I can't say what are the specific things that are going to come from the working groups, but I am very clear that you are going to really think about and co-decide on what the big problem is that you're working on. And then once you do that, and they're called working groups for a reason. They're not talking groups, right? And so we need to get to what are we going to do, right? Because, you know, if you think about the Courageous Conversations Compass, like, we all love to stay in the moral space sometimes. Like, we all love to stay in, like, the intellectual space and have this whole conversation and look at the data. Many of us don't like to be in the feeling space, which I understand. But I have a bias towards the action space. Once you can't go through the whole thing and don't go to the action side, right? We have to figure out what is the thing that we are going to do on behalf of our most marginalized young people, oftentimes, but on behalf of every single child in your district as we move forward. And this is really, really exciting work. This is it's not just about the demographics that you think of, right? As I see Christina Fody standing over there, as we talk about our students with disabilities, and the fact that so many of our students with disabilities don't even come into our system to begin with. And that's so much of the invisible segregation that happens in our system. And so in the District 75 context, we have to say, what is it that we are going to do to make sure that District 75 is not just a place where, you know, that is a segregated place in our system, but that we are pushing ourselves to have high quality offerings for all of our kids, specifically our students with disabilities. And so how do we create a more inclusive system? The answer is in this room, and I'm super excited about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chancellor of the New York City Public Schools. I've really been enriched by this conversation. I want to leave you with this thought from me, which is just that I was asked by an editor at the New York Times to submit an op-ed with the question, what are schools for? And everybody, you know, all the people wrote in and said, schools are for this, schools are for that. And my opinion was, schools are for creating citizens. Right? They're for creating people who know how to be in community, to act on that community, to learn, to listen. And of course, in our so diverse society, I'm talking about New York City, best of the best, and also this whole country and this world, to be a great citizen is to be someone who can learn to love and build across difference. And we have to lower the systemic barriers to each and every one of our kids being able to live up to their God-given potential to do that. And that is starting right here in this room, as the Chancellor said, and right after lunch. So with that, I'm gonna leave you with Jonathan in Jonathan's capable hands. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, thank you.
Let's give it up one more time for Heather McKee and Chancellor Samuels. So some quick logistics. What we're going to do is transition to have